Hola, 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 and bienvenidos. Welcome to the Love Live Rocking Podcast, or how I like to say, the Love Live Rocking, because we have a love for life and for live music. Today, our guest is Mr. Crazy Carter. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm good. Well, we're good to see you, buddy.
Oh, it's
Good to
great to see you.
finally.
Thank you
I've
for being here.
been wanting to be on your show for a while, man. Thank you for having me.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. Can you tell me why you've been wanting to be with us?
Well, the buzz has been around about you and your show, and I'm like, man, you know what? I feel like there's a lot that I can do and maybe shed some light on, but as well as you as well. Just being able to connect with you. I know you've got a long story that we've talked about in the past, and I think getting the story out there, your story is pretty awesome, and just kind of collectively doing this thing together.
Yeah, we certainly are. I think that's the beauty of music. It builds bridges. In my case, as I started the show with a greeting in Spanish saying hola and bienvenidos, is because my first language is Spanish. And I always say to people, if I can, the first words that I ever learned in English were from rock songs. And I only learned English because I wanted to sing along to my favorite tracks, of which it seems you play many of them.
That's awesome, man. That's right.
Yeah.
You got to
So
get together
listen,
on it. You need to come check it out.
I see you wearing a Sunset Strip T-shirt. Can you tell me more about that? I want to know a
Yes.
couple of things. What does that mean? Who came up with the logo? Why the name? And why in the world did you even print T-shirts?
Yeah. So great question. So Sunset Strip, of course, is the where the '80s rock began out in Hollywood there and on Sunset Boulevard. But back in the '80s, of course, all the bands, anybody that knows anything about '80s rock, all the bands, that's where it started. So what I wanted to do was kind of bring that feel back to Dallas Fort Worth and the regional area. By doing that, I wanted to make it a known name that when you said the word Sunset Strip, that it automatically took you back to that scene in the '80s. So it's kind of like a hook in order to basically for me to feel like, if I can get the name out there, that kind of does some of the job of what we do. So the logo, everybody knows rock and roll, especially '80s rock, is the rock hand in the air,
Yeah,
right? You see this everywhere you go. And so I figured you bring the logo in with it, and then have the name. That's half the battle right there. Even if they haven't gone to the show, they know what it's about, reading the name and seeing the logo.
true, true. Tell me now, why did you decide to print T-shirts for your band? Because I've been going to quite a few shows. There's a handful of bands that print shirts, and I love purchasing my own. And I also purchase for my kids, to tell you the truth. But what goes with that mindset of deciding to print T-shirts and to begin building a brand out of a band?
Yeah, awesome, man. So I treat this like a business, Wilmer. I don't think that the days of hey, getting your buddies together and putting a band on the stage is enough anymore, right? You have to treat it like a business, and all aspects of it has to be done properly. So if you're going to do that, right, I wanted to make a shirt that has the logo on it, but also has the website at the bottom to where somebody else sees the shirt out somewhere. It builds your brand without you doing anything. I've always believed in money never sleeps, right?
Okay.
So let these t-shirts get out there. It's just a walking billboard for somebody else to come check out your band, somebody else to say, man, that's a cool shirt, that's a cool logo, and it's got a website on it. I had a girl call me the other day and say, hey, you know what? I wore your shirt to the gym, and as I was walking out, somebody looked you guys up on the phone and going to come check out your show.
That's
So
amazing. And
it's
for
just more
those,
advertising.
that's great. And for those people that are listening in, why don't you go ahead and tell us where could they find about your next show? As you might know, a podcast stays there for a long time. So even though we're recording this in the first week of February, if somebody finds us a few months later, the shows that they're going to be looking for are not even in the planning stages yet. But where could they go and find information about your band, about where you're going to
Yeah,
be playing next?
yeah. So we work Facebook extremely hard, right? So on Facebook, if you go to our site, which is Sunset Strip Dallas '80s Band, that's one of the locations. All of our dates are posted there from here to the next 3 months out. They're all posted there. But we also have several other areas that we reach out to. So there's DFW events pages on Facebook as well. If you
Okay.
just look up DFW events,
But your
if you
virtual
go
home
to
base is Sunset Strip Dallas 80s.
right Dallas
Now,
'80s Band,
now would
right
that be an 80 on an S?
80S, correct.
And then the
But
word
even if you
band.
spell it out, it'll pop up.
Okay, great,
Either
great.
way,
And they certainly have to look for the logo, right?
absolutely, it's the first thing you'll see.
Now, let me ask you
Yep, you
something.
can't miss it.
You added the word Dallas in there. Why? Why not just Sunset Strip Band or Sunset Strip?
Because when we first started, there was another band up in Chicago on Facebook that was Sunset Strip, and it was Sunset Strip Band. And so I reached out to those guys, and they don't really play very much anymore. And I tried to work something out with them, but they were doing this before I started. So
Okay.
in order to have fairness on it, I had to add the word Dallas on it because at first, go ahead.
Did you think about changing the name instead?
At that point, I did. There was a couple of names that I bounced around, but here in Dallas Fort Worth, there's a couple other bands that have the word '80s in it, and I wanted to stay away from that.
Okay.
So I needed a hook with that. So I figured, I'll build this brand, and then the whole business plan here is to kind of build a brand here in Dallas. The first year, play wherever you can, and as much as you can.
Okay.
And whatever money we can have with that,
So how long you been with the band? When did the band start?
I started this about 3 years ago.
Okay. Now I have heard a couple of times. I started when I decided. So are you the person who could be considered the founder of the band?
Absolutely.
Okay. What were you
Yep.
doing before Sunset Strip?
So I played for 9 years in a country band.
In a country
And it
band.
was a
Tell me
country
more about
band.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I moved here in Dallas, and I had a cousin that was out here, and he was playing guitar.
Hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt. You said you moved here to Dallas. Where are you from
Yeah.
originally, Carter?
So I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, out
El
west.
Paso. All right.
That's right.
Awesome.
It's border
Different
town.
time zone, though, right? Isn't it a different time zone than
Yep,
Dallas?
it's an hour behind.
Yeah.
Hour behind. Border town. Spent 30 years there. It's I'm a white guy, pero tú sabes, menos si no hablas español, pues no puedes.
Oh my goodness! For
learn
those
Spanish.
listening, Mr. Carter just went full mosh into Spanish speaking. Do you speak Spanish then?
Sí, pero a veces no me entienden.
Yeah, our audience is certainly not understanding you, but we could go a
I'm
long
telling you,
way
man.
talking Spanish. I love it. If it weren't for rock, I wouldn't be speaking English because Spanish. I once heard at a training. I'm a teacher myself. That's my full-time job, and I went to a training where they said Spanish is not necessarily the first language. Spanish is the language of the heart, and that word
Oh, man.
stuck with me. However, I count money in Spanish. If somebody's paying me whatever, it could be $2 or $200. I need to count the money in Spanish to feel safe. When I get mad, I cuss out in Spanish before I do in English. But somehow the music has ingrained itself in me so deeply that when I need to write letters, even to my spouse and to my children, English comes along because I've taken so many phrases from the English language, and especially from songs, man. Like I've been saying things. Sometimes I've stolen parts from lyrics, written them, but that was in the old times. So, did you learn Spanish before you learned English, Carter?
No, about the same. So
Okay.
about the same. I would say about the same.
Okay.
We had somebody in our household that was there 24/7 that she only spoke Spanish.
Okay, but you're
And-
very familiar with the language. Then you would be able to hold a conversation with any Spanish-speaking person.
Absolutely, yeah. And I find myself even in speaking English. Sometimes I'll start a sentence in English and I'll end it in Spanish. Sometimes it's crazy.
That's great. That's great. Has it ever happened to you that you're starting speaking from stage, saying some things in Spanish? Have you ever tried to incorporate your knowledge of the Spanish language either into your band promo materials on the website, or have you thought about putting maybe a song in Spanish into the set? Has it ever crossed your mind, or is it
Yeah.
just kind of separate thing?
No. So first question, yes. So when I work the crowd and go out there and I see maybe some Spanish speakers out there, I'll go out there and then from the stage I'll holler at them in Spanish and I'll say a couple of things here and there just to engage them, okay? But
Yeah.
as far as in the set list or doing some other things, I can't. It's real strange. I can't read or write Spanish. I speak it, but I can't
Okay.
read it.
That's the situation with a lot of my students because their families speak Spanish all the time, but the learning of reading and writing happens at school. So even though they speak Spanish at home, they don't get the literacy of the language because nobody taught it to them. So that's perfectly fine. Now, you were telling me you were born in El Paso, right?
Right, yeah. I was born out there.
How long ago?
Let's see. So I'm 48. So I was born in 73. So yeah, I stayed out there 30
73.
years. Yeah.
Oh, that's
and
amazing.
stayed out there
Now,
30
let me ask you
years.
something. How did you get into rock music living in El Paso? Because I would think, and I've known some people from El Paso and have been there myself, a lot of people listen to more of this hybrid of regional Mexican music and Tejano music. So how do you get into 80s rock growing up in El Paso?
Yeah, man, I love it. Okay, so I had two older brothers. One, I'm the youngest, right? So my older brother,
Youngest of three?
he's 8. Yeah, 3 of us. No sisters, just mom, dad, and three brothers. And my oldest brother is 8 years older than me. And then the one right above me is 2 years. So when I was raised, he was blaring. I mean, he had the Kiss posters all over the walls, and he was blaring Kiss. And so he's probably at this time he's probably about say 16 or 17. Well, that puts me at 8 years old, 9 years old, and my room's next door, and I'm listening to it all.
Yeah.
And he had me convinced, man, that Wilmer. He had me totally convinced that he was Ace Frehley from Kiss, because he would leave at night. And I'm a young kid, and I would go to bed. But so the whole time, Wilmer, I'm like, I would go to school and tell people, my brother's Ace Frehley. Don't tell nobody.
Really?
So for at least 2 or 3 years, I thought my brother was Ace Frehley. So I thought, well, there's my calling. I'm going to do that. When I got old enough to realize,
did you think about being his backup guitar player, or what were you thinking?
Man.
Where are you gonna be?
Oh man, I was doing concerts in my own bedroom with my little headlight and my plastic guitar already by 9.
Awesome.
I was shredding in there, man. But
yeah, that's great.
Now,
the impact of Kiss is amazing.
Yeah, man. Jeez.
Go ahead, keep going.
They're pioneers, And then
so
my
keep
older
telling
brother.
about your concerts and you shredding in your bedroom.
Yeah, man. So I was, and back then, Wilmer, if you remember, we didn't have the internet. So in order to figure out what your bands were doing, I went and bought these. I still have them. Circus Magazine.
Oh my goodness! Rip
from
Magazine,
80
Circus Magazine.
All of them, man. I kept.
You got him in
every
perfect
single last
shape.
one of them. Oh man, I'll tell
I
you
just
what.
bought that issue of eBay.
You did? Yeah,
Oh
I've had
my
these.
gosh,
I've had these since
Operator.
88, 89.
Oh my gosh,
So Wilmer,
that's impressive.
that's the only way we knew, right? What your bands were doing is these, and so I would go down to the store and I would buy these magazines, and it showed you everything that these bands were doing, and I was like, man, they're all out in L.A. I had to find a way when I got old enough to try to get out there, and
okay.
yeah, just
So let me ask you something. Right after your brother was listening to Kiss, what was your other brother listening to? Was he also following the footsteps, or did
He was, absolutely he was. And he was only 2 years. So him being only 2 years, that's when the 80s was really starting to morph from the 70s to the 80s. And by the time I was hitting about 11, 12 years old, man, my brother was already into Motley Crue, and he was listening to, he would do some of the 70s stuff because it was still there. But these 80s bands that were hitting, when my brother bought that Shout at the Devil album, oh man, I called him. I swear, I told my parents I was sick, couldn't go to school, so I could listen to that all day long. And I still remember it, man. It just changed.
Gosh.
Yeah, it just changed it for me then.
Did your parents fall for it?
Oh yeah, man. Because at that point they had nothing to lose. But my brother wouldn't let me listen to his album because it was his room. So the only way I could get my hands on that is I had to say I was sick, so that everybody's gone, and then I could sit in there all day. It's amazing, man.
That's amazing, Carter. I did pretend to be sick just so that I could play on certain video games that some friends would let me borrow, but never thought of that. And you are talking about being 10 years old and listening to Shout at the Devil. My first Motley Crue experience was the song Girls, Girls, Girls on radio. Because of the motorcycle sound, I used to think they were something more like CC Top as far as their looks. I only discovered their looks with the Dr. Feelgood video. But you had the opportunity to get into Motley Crue at age 10. That's incredible. So what were your parents listening to at the time? Did they ever get shocked at the covers of the album? Because the band really designed those covers to shock people.
Man, and so when I started putting the posters up, my mom would come upstairs, downstairs. My mom would come down and be like, that's not going to go. That's not going to fly. And all kinds of stuff. It was a battle, man. It was a battle. But, they listen to country, so they didn't understand it really.
Gotcha.
They were listening to the traditional 70s, 80s Caucasian country that was going on then.
Did they ever tell you that music is from not the good place? It's not. It doesn't have positive messages. It's going to corrupt your life.
Absolutely, all those, and somewhat I believed it, but I've always thought the music is what you made it, because back in those days I was listening to it and I would find the drum beat in there, and I was listening to it like, oh man, you just pick out things in there,
Okay. So was there ever a transition when you went wanting to be Ace Frehley to wanting to be Peter Criss?
Okay, so not Peter Chris. What did it for me, Wilmer, I'm glad you asked that, is I think it was 1984 when MTV first came out, or 83. But when I saw Tommy Lee from Motley Crue, when he flipped his cage upside down in Tacoma, Washington,
Yeah.
I realized right then, Wilmer, wait a second. He's playing drums, he's getting paid, and he gets the girls. I said, that changed it for me. I said, you know what? I'm gonna play drums, and I started picking these up.
Okay, you got some drumsticks in there. So Tommy Lee made it for you. If you're talking about that video where he flips around, that's the Wild Side video that I remember seeing. As a matter of fact, I was looking at it yesterday, and it still blew me away, man. I was thinking this probably is the best music video ever as far as capturing the live experience, because it's such an amazing performance. Now you're talking about going from Shadow the Devil at age 10 to deciding to become a drummer when you saw that video, which I believe you were probably around 14. What were you doing in between then? What kind of records were you buying? What kind of
Yeah.
dreams were you having in your mind before you thought of music?
Well, it was okay. It was always kind of music driven, but there was some Night Ranger in there.
Okay.
You know, Poison. These kind of bands made it to where I still enjoyed it and followed it. But within those years, it was the time when I wasn't really focused on drums. But my mom had a drum kit. It wasn't a very good drum kit,
Oh,
Wilmer,
she
but
did?
my mom, yeah, she had a drum kit. My mom played drums back in the day.
For
My mom
herself?
was a drummer.
Oh my goodness!
No, she was in a band in
a,
high
in a
school.
country band.
She was in more like
Okay.
I would say like a 50s band, 50s, 60s band. It was
Okay.
rock, but it wasn't what we were doing today. But we
Yeah.
had a drum kit, but it was one of those drum kits that was off in the basement. Nobody really messed with it too much, you know. And so that was the closest thing for rock and roll for me that I could afford. You know, back when you're that age, you don't have any money.
Okay.
So I would
Yeah, true,
mess around with
true.
her drum kit.
Okay.
And that's what
So
kind of
when
developed.
did they ever say to you, "Hey Carter, it seems that you're serious about this, at least as a hobby. We want to get you a drum kit." Did that ever happen? Did you have to ask for it, or did you have to go ahead and work for it to buying it yourself?
Yeah, no, they wouldn't do it because here's what they didn't want, Wilmer. They didn't believe that me being a musician was good because they didn't want me to be in the bars right out of high school and playing music. They were like, oh my
Yeah.
God. Because I had two older brothers that kind of went down that road and didn't end very good for them around that time. They're good guys now,
Okay.
but they
But
were like,
so they
uh-oh.
pursued music, and they pursued being into bars playing music.
Well, they didn't pursue music. They pursued girls in bars.
Okay, they were missing out on the rock and roll part.
Right, right. So they were like, well, we
Yeah,
don't want to
okay.
get this kid wrapped around in there.
Yeah, let's you forward a little bit. Now that you're playing in a band, are your folks still around, Carter?
Absolutely. Yeah, so my dad,
Have they
they're
ever had a
divorced.
chance
My
to come
dad,
see you at a concert?
absolutely, yeah. So my dad lives in El Paso. You know, he's in his 80s, and when he's in town, he comes and he supports and he likes it, but it's a little much for him, man. He's a country guy. It's a little much for him. It's a
Yeah.
little hard. His
But
exact
he
words
checks
to
a
me
couple of
last
songs
time.
out to see you.
Yeah, oh yeah. My mom comes every once in a while, and she's like, last review she gave me, Wilmer, was, you know, all those people are having fun, and you're doing a good job, but I really wish you wouldn't cuss on the microphone. That was her whole thing. Maybe I slipped a cuss word here and there, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, she's a good mom. She's still trying to take care of her boy, and at the same time, she's showing up to the places where she probably never saw herself going to for the love of you. And
That's
that's the
right.
beautiful thing about music. Now, I think you were gonna say something about your dad. That your dad also tell you something. Did he give you sort of a review, or I think you said something like, "My dad's last words about
Yeah.
this were."
So my dad never stops coaching, right? I'm his son. He never stops giving me influence. The next morning after our gig, it was a real packed gig, and I was worried about that because they gave him a seat in the back, but he said, "Man, you know, son, you got those kids in a frenzy, and everybody's having a blast, and they're drinking a lot, and it's really good. But that's the first time I've ever been in a bar for 4 hours and didn't recognize one song." That's his way of saying, you know. But it's not for him. But
Is
he
he?
supports
That,
it.
has he ever requested some songs?
Yeah, remember I told you I used to play in a country band. He knew
Yeah.
all of those
Okay.
songs.
But back then, did he request your songs? So
Yeah.
he's probably describing the shock of seeing you go from this country band where he knew all the music to Sunset Strip where he doesn't recognize
Yeah.
the songs.
Absolutely.
Okay. Hey, well, listen, "Smoking in the Boys' Room" by Motley Crue is a cover. Also, "Your Mama Don't Dance" by Poison is a cover. Does he recognize the originals, though? They were
He
kind of like,
does. He
not
does.
necessarily
Yep, for
country, but
sure.
softer rock.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. He recognized
Okay.
those. Unfortunately, we typically don't play those on the set list.
Okay. Why not?
Well, we will, but our set list that we typically have, Wilmer, is just, I mean, I believe a set list is built by the fans, right? Because every band that
Yes.
I've ever been in or know, I believe that the set list is what the guys want to play, and you're like, okay, but that set list always changes because you people that request songs over and over, you eventually start saying, okay, we got to put that in the set list. So I believe that your set list is
Okay.
created by the fans.
Okay. Well, I certainly respect that, and I think that's the mindset of many successful bands that want to venture into more artsy stuff, and then they say, "Well, our fan base is also expecting this from us." And I think it comes with maturity to understand that music is also a product that brings joy to people, that brings happiness, and you gotta get those fans singing along. Now, has there been any fan request that has been so constant that you had to include a song, but it's a song that you are not certainly a fan of?
Yeah, so actually, a lot of people want to hear Warrant Heaven, and we
Okay, I love that
we
song.
would
I'm a big Warren fan.
do
Are
I.
you not?
Yeah, yeah, oh, big time. But it's
Okay,
the drum fill's a little challenging. I got to get back to the woodshed before I put that one out there because see the guys in the band.
that's
I mean, they're pretty good, and I'm not going to embarrass it. So it's going to be coming up pretty soon on the set list, but that one we get quite a bit. Also, we get a lot of requests for some Cinderella, and so we're gonna kick
okay.
out some Cinderella as well. We typically don't have that
You
in the
know,
set list now.
I am impressed because I am no musician myself. I did play on the bass for a couple of years, 20, 30 years ago. So when I think of Heaven, I would have thought it's one of Warren's easier songs to play because it's so
Yeah.
soft, the guitar strumming, and somewhat predictable in the beat.
No,
Not
it
not
is.
predictable, but easy to follow along.
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right. It is. It's slower, but I mean, the drum beat's a little bit different, a little challenging here and there. I mean, it's nothing like. It's something I can get together in a day, but I just haven't done it.
It's great to hear that you hold back on a song because you want to get it right. It shows me that your mindset is not just about playing the songs, not just the fan ask and I'll give, but we gotta give this right. We gotta get this right, and that seems to permeate what you do. So, how about those songs like "Smoking in the Boys' Room" and "Your Mama Don't Dance"? I was thinking when you said we cannot play those yet, if it had anything to do with copyright issues or whatnot. And again, I'm not fully familiar with those things because they're also, even though I know them from Motley Crue and Poison, they were actually made famous in the 70s by other people. Does
Right.
that kind of sound in the song being two 70s play into the decision of not including them into Sunset Strip's set list? You want to play more
No,
popular songs by those bands?
no, no, no. So the reason why is what I try to do, Wilmer, is I try to get two songs from each artist that were big in the 80s. So, like, we already do two from Motley Crue. We do two from Poison. We do two from Skid Row. We do two from Van Halen. I try to keep it to where we don't it's a tribute to the 80s, Sunset Strip. So I try not to do
Okay.
too many by one artist. And so, because typically we
Okay.
only do about 24 songs a night.
Only 24. Man, that's a lot more than most tribute shows that I've been to.
Yeah, we do three sets, because we do the whole night typically. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, that's great to hear. I'm going to go back to that, but let me ask you something. So, who chooses the songs? Because if you say two from Motley Crue, this is what I would tell you. I like to hear "Don't Go Away Mad," and I probably like to hear "Wild Side." And there's a couple of tracks from the Theater of Pain album that I know everybody hates that I love. "Keep Your Eye on the Money" is probably my favorite. If I were in your band, I don't think you and I could ever agree on the two songs that we're going to play for Motley Crue. How do you go about
Yeah.
this decision-making process? It must be incredibly tough. I mean, think of Poison. They had several hits. Van Halen, come on. Is it one Van Halen era, one Sammy Hagar era? I mean,
Yeah. No.
tell
No.
us more about this decision-making process.
So it's 100% trial and error. So we play pretty much every single weekend, sometimes twice a weekend. So when you play over, when you're playing over 100 shows, again, it's trial and error. So if we pick something like Wild Side, all the guys are going to know the song. The girls end up going to get drinks. But if you play Girls, 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 the girls come up and dance, and the guys stay there too because they're watching the girls, right? And so like
Uh-huh.
like Poison. There's a ton, man. There's a ton of great Poison songs. But we do Every Rose Has Its Thorn because, again, it keeps the girls there.
Of course,
And we do
they're
Nothing But a
number
Good
one.
Time. Yeah. And like I
Okay.
would like to do Fallen
So you're
Angel. I'd
telling
like
me
to do.
if I go to watch Sunset Strip, I will not get to hear Falling Angel?
Oh, no, you will. All you do is put your name and your request on a $20 bill and stick it in the tip jar. Wilmer, you get anything you want.
Okay, listen, I'm gonna bring 10 $20 bills,
All
and I
right.
better get my money's worth. I'm gonna ask them. So would I get to write "I Want Action" by Poison and get that song played live?
That's right. So what we do
That's
is
amazing.
we play our stuff and then we take a break and then we kind of get together and see what's out there and then those guys. I'm not going to include myself with this, but those guys, the three guys in that band, man, they're human jukeboxes. Those guys can play anything from the '80s. They are very professional. So if they can figure it out, I can figure it out with them.
And if they can't, do I get my $20 bill back?
Yeah, oh yeah. We've never had to give the money back. What I do sometimes is we'll play the song, and if the song's not right where it needs to be, I'll offer you like $9.48 back.
All right, all right. You get us to the chorus at least.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Carter. So how many songs in total have you guys played live? Do you keep a record? I'm already thinking that I would want to go and check the setlist website to see how many songs you play because you must have an incredible collection. Like you define your bandmates as human jukeboxes. You must know literally hundreds of songs.
Yeah, I'm gonna give them the credit. They do, and
Okay.
as long as the drum beat is somewhat similar, I can figure it out with the drum fills and all that. So I would like to take the credit on that. But Magic Mark, I mean, my gosh, he's a professional. I'm gonna tell you, if he wasn't as career minded as he is now, that dude should be on the road playing with the national band. Whiskey Warren, my gosh, man, that guy sings his guts out every single night. He does the high stuff, the low stuff. He'll play anything. And Party Pablo, man, there's nothing better than a true professional. That guy right there, as a bass player, allows me to make mistakes and be lazy because he is so good at playing bass. So I would like to take the credit, but it's those guys that know
So,
most of it.
so you mentioning them by name made me come up with two questions. The first question is, I see you here on my screen, and for those listening to us, we're recording this also on a video platform. But what I see here is Crazy Carter. I don't know your last name. Is that something that you keep private, or is that something that you prefer to go by your artistic persona, even on Zoom conversations or video conversations? Will
Yeah,
I
no,
ever
no,
get to
no.
know your last name?
No, no, no. So I'd like to keep that a little bit private, but that is my last name. I go by my last name.
Okay, so you have a
Because,
first name.
yeah. Yeah, because
So,
I try to keep the professional world and this a little bit. I've got a corporate America job, and it kind of makes things a little harder
so if
because.
I'm writing my in my $20 bill, I want to know your name. Will you sing it from stage?
Oh yeah. And that it'll be hard for me, but 20 money talks. $20 is $20.
Okay, now I want to go back to what you said about corporate America, but first let me ask you. You talked about Party Pablo, you talk about Magic Mark, you talk about Whiskey Warren, and you're Crazy Carter. Those must not be the real guys' names. Who came up with those names? And can you tell me how did that process happen?
Yeah. So, man, so these guys are that to me that is their real name. Even
Okay,
off the stage, I mean, I know their real names, but even off the stage, whether we're driving to a gig, whether I see them out during the week, I call them first and last name, and I promise you, they will tell you that's what I call them.
so Whiskey Warren has the word Warren somewhere in his ID.
Correct.
I thought it was a tribute to Warren the Martini, but then I thought he's the singer, so he's probably not paying tribute to a guitar player.
Right. Right.
Okay,
Same thing with Magic Mark, and same thing with Party Pablo.
so Pablo is somewhere in his ID.
Right. Correct.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, whose idea was to create the other name? Did you tell him, hey, your name is Mark, you got to find out somewhere else with an M, your name is Pablo, find something else with a P? Was that your guideline that you said
No,
for them?
no, no. I don't think I believe that I came up with the names, but I gave them an option to change it if they didn't want to. We could discuss it, but pretty much that they were given the names. And to be honest with you, um, Wilmer, I turned the band over one time. I had three other musicians to start with, and they had names as well, character names. And then we moved forward. They're great guys. They play in other bands, but I moved forward and I got these three guys, and that's what kind of put as their character names. But
And the
they
other
had a
three
body.
guys also had character names.
Correct. We had Jam and Jason, we had Lightning Ryan, and we had a guy named Rob Dog. So they all had character names.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
it's
we're going to
important. It's
send a
either
shout out to them. I hope that they get to hear us. And
me
what do
too,
you have
and I'm
fun
sure they will.
memories of playing with them? Is
Oh man, I tell you what, it never stops, man. This is my love, my hobby. You know, just those guys, and I still see them around. They're still some of my greatest friends. I don't end things in a negative fashion. Never have. You know, they're good guys, and they're
that's
still
great to hear
musicians.
because I was actually in two bands and I was probably for about 4 months in each, but that happened in 1992. I mean that's almost 30 years ago, and yet those guys are still my best friends. Not all of them, but the ones that I don't talk to is just because of distance and other things. But I love those guys to death. I would still call them my circle of best friends. Like
Yeah,
the
no,
two
no,
bands
no.
that I play with, I get along with them wonderfully. And I'm very happy to hear that even though they had to transition out of Sunset Strip, you are still in touch with them. Because to me, one of the magic things that happens through the love that we all share, that both you and I share with this music, is that we grew in separate countries. We grew completely different lives. But once we get to talk about music, there's a bond that forms that can lead to a friendship. And it's great that even as band members part ways, the friendship remains.
Absolutely, man. You know, even when, if God forbid, if one of the guys in the band now cannot make one of the gigs, we've actually used one of those other guys as a substitute, and it works out fine.
Okay. You know what is interesting though? You're the drummer in the band. Three guys left. The drummer stayed. I cannot think of a original songwriters band that has a major record label deal where that happened. It's usually the guitar player or the one that kind of keeps the core of the band. Sometimes the singer in namesake bands like Bon Jovi or Winger, and it's hard to think. So it's interesting because you seem to be at the core of the band. You're the founder. You seem to be the driving force as far as booking gigs and everything, and yet you're the drummer. Do you think that's a conscious decision? How do you see that happening? Because many times, it's like the guitar player who has more control of the band, or the singer who is the visual face of the band. It's just an interesting paradox. Do you want to elaborate a little bit? Have you ever reflected on that? Like, oh, I probably wanted to be the drummer because I would have the opportunity to see everything from behind and take a look at all things and be analyzing. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, no, yeah. So I think that happens by default, Wilmer, because what I never really thought of it to be like, hey, I want to lead this band, I want to do this and that. I always, just like anybody else, I always wanted to be a piece of the puzzle, and in a sense, I am. But I was like, I found a knack for being able to book gigs, and I found a knack for being able to promote this stuff. And when you have that, and I'm not going to say that I'm good at it, but I have that desire to do that. And when you have that desire and you're able to do that, and then things start falling in your lap and it starts coming together, and it just makes it easy. And then all of a sudden you're appointed as the leader because you've kind of handled everything. So you just kind of take on that responsibility and say, okay, it's not going to be perfect all the time, but this is the way it needs to be. And then collectively, you just kind of move forward. So by default, I never really wanted to say, hey, this is a dictatorship, this is how it goes. And I respect the guys in the band. And it's amazing how much communication we have during the week about things before the weekend comes. And we all have day jobs, we all have careers. But it's amazing how much we talk during the week about the weekend and about sound and about set list and about load in, sound check and what time's downbeat. It's the communication's there. But I'm the one that drives.
Great. I want to ask a question, and it's going to lead up to something else. But how would you define success for Sunset Strip? If you were to think, what's your game plan for where would you like to see yourself in January of 2023? Looking back, what would have been a successful year for Sunset Strip in 2022?
Great. Okay. So I'm going to have to take a step back on that. So the business plan that I had for this, starting out when we first started about 2018, I had different guys I told you, but the business plan that I set for this was, okay, I'm going to launch this brand, and I'm going to get the guys together in a band, and we're going to stay in the studio for 3 months. We're going to play twice a week until we get a solid set list. Then we're going to go out and play anywhere and everywhere, just to get our name out there for very little money, just enough to get our name out there. And for the first year, I took a pretty big loss because of the fact I had to pay the guys, and we weren't making much money. We were
Financial
playing gigs
loss?
like financial. Yeah, because I took a financial loss because you're paying for a studio, and then you're also paying. The gigs you're playing are like $200, $300, and so you got to pay your guys more than that. I would never, even back then, I would never pay my guys less than $100. So you're paying the guys, and you're losing. You have to advertise, and so the first year, my whole business plan was to just go out and promote this thing and get the name out there. Our first gig that we played in Dallas Fort Worth was downtown Dallas at a real small bar, and there was 4 people there, and the 4 people there were just our friends.
Oh wow!
And that's hard to do. 4 people in the crowd, and you're in spandex, wig, and makeup. It's very prideful, right? So that year, that's what happened. The second year, I decided, okay, what the business plan for 2019, 2020 was to upgrade everything, as far as the music, the set list, but also the venues that you play. Get a little bit more money. You spend a whole year playing your guts out everywhere. Now let's just take better venues and more money.
Okay.
That year paid for itself. Okay. Then the very next year, it was like, okay, now what we need to do is play as much as we can, but at venues and be more fan orientated. So one of the things I would say that we do as far as success, like you're asking, that makes it different than some bands don't do, is when the days of going up there, your time to play, and you expect people to follow you from there, and you expect people to just be like, okay, this is a great band, they sound great, great, we'll follow. I think that those days are over. And so when I say customer or fan orientated, I think what you have to do is it starts from the minute you show up at the venue and the minute you get dressed. I spend so much time working the crowd. And when I say working the crowd, I'm out there at every table, talking to them, joking with them, hugging, just hugging them, doing everything I can to support this band. And so that fan base right there is where I feel like, you know what, we finally got them. The 2,000 followers we have doesn't seem like a whole lot, but I promise you, organically, we've gotten everyone.
Where are these followers? 2,000.
On Facebook.
On
Facebook.
So you got a Facebook page with 2,000 followers. Are those 4 friends that showed up to your first show part of those 2,000?
Absolutely. They're family members. Well, 2 are family members and one's in another band. They come all the time. They still come all the time. And they're in awe.
Awesome,
and I'll tell
awesome.
you,
I would love to get... Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you, the reason why I use Facebook as a big measuring stick is because when you're starting out and you're booking in bars, some bars won't talk to you unless you have at least 1,000 followers on Facebook. So when you go to book a gig and you say, "Hey, I want to bring our people here, I want to party," they won't even talk to you. They say, "Do you have 1,000? Do you have 1,000 followers on Facebook?" And if the answer is no, then you don't have a shot.
Wow. So the booking business is tough.
It is. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's
Well, listen,
I mean,
it's not easy, but somebody's got to do that dirty work.
yeah,
You got to put in
And-
the
and
effort. You got to put the sweat equity to make it happen.
man. And let me tell you, I'm not trying to be negative, but it's a very thankless job because let me tell you, the minute
Okay.
you book a gig, this is the way it usually goes. You book the gig, the band shows up. The band's typically not real happy for whatever reason, whether it's sound or whether it's the venue, and then the bar will come at you and be like, "Well, you're starting late. Sound check's supposed to be at this time." It's a thankless job. There's so much pressure. I mean, I love it to death, but it's so much pressure because you're getting hit from all angles.
Why do you love it to death? If it seems, first of all, you mentioned you got a corporate job. You were able to invest into this brand for the first year, taking financial losses. So you don't certainly need this for your livelihood. And yet, as you relate, there's days that can be, pretty crappy with far of the attitudes of everybody involved due to circumstances. What makes you do this, Carter? Because you said that you are about to hit 50 years old and you're still rocking your heart out there. Why?
Great, man. I'll tell you what. all of the work that goes into this, everything, the money you spend on the instruments, all the work that you put in to book it, all the things that go wrong during it. I would do all of that and take, I mean, it's for the love of that music. I'll tell you what, when we're up there on the stage and the crowd is singing every song right back to you, and they're yelling and they're having a great time, and I see all those Sunset Strip t-shirts out there, and they're singing every song, and I look over at Party Pablo, and me and him are in a groove, and Magic Mark's over there shredding an AC/DC song, and Whiskey Warren's standing up on the speaker going crazy, and it makes you feel like you're doing something right when the crowd's into it, and for that alone, I'll do this till I'm 70.
All right, 70. Is that your end plan?
Yeah, my knees aren't very good, but you know what? I'll be okay.
Okay, yeah, well, you certainly will, and I'll be part of that audience screaming all that I can to show my support, and more than support, my gratitude, because I'll tell you what, the live music experience to me, as somebody who arrived into this country, I came to the U.S. in 2002. I had only been here once to California for a seminar, but in 2002 I moved to Texas. I was incredibly looking forward to the opportunity to watch concerts. As soon as I got offered a job to move to Texas, the first thing I did was to try to find in that maze of the internet, what was back then, which concerts would be playing, because that was a dream come true. My first show by an English language band was a Motley Crue Megadeth show in Mexico City. Now, Mexico City is not in my country. I had to fly to Mexico City in the year 2001 to see them play. Because when I was a kid, when I was 16, 18 years old, we would have local concerts by local bands, and during sound check or in the intermission between bands, they would play songs. I remember one time they were playing the song Wild Side, and me and my buddy, he ended up being the drummer in one of my bands, we look at each other and we smiled, and we both closed our eyes, and then we look at each other again, and he said, "What are you thinking?" I said, "I'm imagining it's Tommy Lee playing live." And he said, "Me
Yeah,
too."
man. God,
And I'll
love
always remember the love for that music, the love for that music. And I was 16, and I knew that there'd be almost no chance that we get to see those bands unless we had a chance to go out of the country. And that is what you're describing. It's so, I cannot even think of the words that are appropriate to describe it, because it's magical, it's mystical. It's such a bond between band, even though you guys didn't write the songs, between us, even though we are at a venue that is not necessarily made only for concerts, but is made for drinking and eating and hanging with buddies. But once the song plays, there's just a connection. There's just a connection,
yeah.
and I love it. And I'm so happy that you're going to be playing for another 20 years, because I'll be there, man. I'll be there as many times as I can. Now, let me ask you, do you have any particular memories of any particular show that made you feel, this is it, I've made it, this is why I'm doing this? Because it doesn't seem that first show with 4 members in the audience was that kind of show.
Yeah, no. You know, one thing that stands out to me that I'll remember for the rest of my life is we were playing a 2-night show in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and we went up there and we played. It was Friday night and the first night, and you know, I don't know what it is, Wilmer. Here in Dallas Fort Worth, there's so many tribute bands and there's so much live music that when you get out of town a little bit, the whole town comes out. I mean, it's packed. And so we were playing Fort Smith 2 nights, and that Friday night it was jam-packed in there before we played. I mean, it was packed to where the fire marshal was out front and wouldn't let anybody else in unless somebody came out. So we're going up to play, and
Wow.
we played the gig. Yeah, it was crazy. And we went up and we played the gig, and lights out, man. I mean, we played the shit out of those songs, man, and we didn't want to leave and so forth. So that night we left, went back to the DoubleTree Hotel, and I needed some medicine. I had some heartburn. Hate to say it, I'm old, but so I had called an Uber to take me. It's probably about 3:30 in the morning. Called an Uber to take me to the store. So I went downstairs to the DoubleTree, got in his car. He took me, got some medicine. I was getting back in the car, and Van Halen was on the radio. And I asked the Uber driver, I said, "Hey, is that Van Halen?" He said, "Yeah, do you like that?" I said, "Yeah." He turned it up. He said, you like this type of music?" I said, "Yes, sure do." He said, "Man, there was a killer band up at this venue tonight. It was awesome, man. It was an 80s band. I couldn't get in. I got tickets for tomorrow, but I stood outside and watched this band. They played all 80s. They rocked the house, man. They're going to be there tomorrow. I'm taking off work. I'm going up there to watch this thing." Right then, I felt special. I was like, oh, man. Long live rock and roll.
Oh, my goodness, Carter. Oh my goodness, Carter, he's taking off work to go watch your band the next day. Did you ever confess up to him that you were part of that band?
No, no, because I felt I don't know, man. I felt weird about it, but I take that story with
Yeah.
me. And then I was sharing a room with the bass player. Man, I went and woke him up. I said, "Dude, you're not gonna believe what this guy." He was like, "All right, man, you're drunk. Go to bed." But I promise you, that's a true story.
He didn't believe the story.
Not at first.
He
Not at
didn't believe the
first.
story. That is amazing. That is a great story. Yeah, that's to me the magic of this music because my dad, for example, who is the reason that I got into this music, I was probably 8 years old, 1983, and he had his record collection. He didn't speak English. He was a Spanish speaker, and he had, I remember, four records. Boston, the self-titled debut. He had Led Zeppelin 4, which I was weirded out by the cover. What is that old man doing with
Yeah,
sticks on
yeah,
his
yeah,
back?
yeah. Right.
Like he's gonna break him.
Right.
Then he had the Grand Funk Railroad wearing American Band album, and he had Black Sabbath's Paranoid. So from those albums, he would play all the time. For some reason, I particularly fell in love with the Boston cover, and he began teaching me English using those words. Now, my dad's been gone for over 20 years. It's been such a hurtful loss in my life that I cannot even tell you right now the year in which he died. It's somehow hard. I memorize it and I block it off. But if I'm listening to some of those songs, and I close my eyes and I'm listening to the song, I remember the times where he bought me the record. Just today here in my house, I have a big puzzle of two, well, I have several puzzles, but this guy who was here, he's actually my half brother, which is going to be another topic that I'm going to touch on. My father died when he was 7. He doesn't remember my father the same way that I do because even though my dad divorced my mom at the time I was around 14, between ages of 14 and 21, we were hanging out all the time. I even saw him more when he and my mom split because he would come and pick us up almost every day.
Yeah.
The two puzzles that I have framed on the wall are Hysteria by Def Leppard and Painkiller by Judas Priest. And this, my half brother, who is actually here right now, he's 27, he asked me, what are those? And I explained to him, and he said, do you like that kind of music? I said, that record up there, the 87 Hysteria, your father, my father, our father, that was one of the very first records in English he bought for me. He bought the local license, or legitimately licensed copy, but was manufactured locally. So it had a price. It was the equivalent of $2 or $3 at the time. The bottom record, Judas Priest Painkiller, released in 1990, because Judas Priest was not that popular, it would not be licensed. You'd have to buy the import. Import being
Right,
from the
yeah.
U.S. I mean, I know that in America, when we think of import, we think Japan or Europe. And that was the equivalent of about $25. That was probably half my dad's salary back, or not even salary, half what he would earn in his business back in 1990. And as I was telling this to my half brother, I was feeling incredibly sad that he didn't get to see that, but I was feeling incredibly thankful of what my dad did for me. Because buying those records, I'll tell you, I'm a guy that listens to Judas Priest Painkiller. And you know that intro. I'm sure you do.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
the drummer. You know that intro.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel emotional and I begin crying. I feel
Yeah.
emotional, I begin crying. Do I feel energized? Yeah. Do I feel like I want to rock out? Yeah. But I feel grateful that my father bought those records for me. Because with how long he's been gone, that's how I remember him. I've gone to some shows, and there was another instance at another show where I was like in the third row, and they were playing this song, and I began, just tears began rolling down my face. I'm singing out loud and
Yeah.
everything, but tears rolling down my face. The crowd, there were like 4 people ahead of me. They moved to the sides. I kind of glanced over and while I opened my eyes, and a girl kind of like tapped on her boyfriend or husband, I don't know. And he said, "Look at him," and they move aside so they would let me walk to the front row
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
because they could
That's
tell that the
great,
music
man.
was connecting with me. Man, it's just the beauty of music is what you say about how it builds a crowd together, how you can connect with a taxi driver that doesn't know who you are and is praising the job you do. And that's what I feel about what you do, Carter. That's why even the reason for this podcast, because I've taken my kids to shows, and this is what I believe. I will die. Hopefully I will die before them. I want them to hear those songs and remember the good times we had. No matter
Oh,
what the
man,
lyrics
I'll
of the
tell you.
song say.
Your dad would be really proud of you now, man. If he saw this, your dad would be super proud. Good for you. I'm glad you're doing
Yeah.
this.
And my son, he's 6 years old. He listens to More Than a Feeling come up in our speakers, and he says, "Your daddy's song." He doesn't
Yeah.
probably even remember the name Boston. He calls it your daddy's song. So this is why I love the music. But now that we're talking about family, we're already talking about your folks. Do you have children, Carter?
Yeah, I do. So, was married for 30 years, been divorced for about 2.5 years, and my kids are grown. So I got a 26-year-old female daughter. She lives in Chicago. Actually, she's about 27. And then I've got a 25-year-old lives here in Dallas. And then I got a son that's about to be 21. And they're off doing their
Okay.
things.
So
having
have they
their-
seen you play?
Oh yeah, yeah. They enjoy it. They enjoy it. You know, I mean, my son plays drums too. He doesn't enjoy it as much as I
Okay.
do, but I try to get him to play when he comes to the shows. I try to bring him up to play a song or two, but he doesn't have quite the personality that I do yet. So he's like, well, I don't want to play yet.
Okay. Well, maybe it's hard for him to live up to fill up his father's shoes because he's seen you perform and he knows what a great performer you are. What about your other older two children? Did they ever pick up any instrument?
No, they never did. You know, I didn't. You know, they played sports and they kind of did that, but they just the music bone wasn't there for them either way. My son, it wasn't really there either, but I kind of pushed him because when he was young, there's nothing better to me than watching a 8, 9-year-old, sit there and play a Journey song. And I took him to
True.
a gig, and they saw him, and I don't know how the word came out, but they found out that he played. And then the drummer came and asked me, he says, "Hey, can he play? Can he play?" And I said, "Yeah." "Okay, we're gonna put him up there." And here, I think he was 9 years old. They put him up there, and it was it wasn't all rock, so it was Billie Jean from Michael Jackson, straight beat all the way
It's a
through.
fantastic
Straight
song.
beat. Yeah. So he went up there, man, as a 9-year-old. I wish I would have video of it, man, but I didn't get the video of it. But he went up there and played that song, and so I try to get him to play different songs at our gigs, but he's like, nah, not right now, you know.
But you know what? I'm in awe of the fact that despite being a professional musician that does this with a lot of dedication and passion, you're okay with letting your children choose their own path. And I think that's one of the greatest things that a parent can do. Yeah, if it were up to me, my kids would be listening up to Slayer and Judas Priest and Def Leppard all the time, and they certainly are familiar with that music. I had my 10-year-old daughter come up to me the other day, and she says, "Daddy, it's weird to me that I have kids my age in school that they don't know what Tommy used to work on the dock means. I
Yeah.
can say that phrase, and they don't know what that means. And it's weird
Yeah.
to me because I know the story. I know even who the Tommy was supposed to be in the story because we
Right.
listened to podcasts with Desmond Child. So how about that song? Is that song one that you play in your show?
Oh yeah, every weekend. It's a great song. It tells a story, and that's the thing. Letting them choose their own music. I kind of forced the music on them, not the instruments, but I kind of forced the music. But I got to tell you about Party Pablo, what he did last week.
Tell me.
We had a gig in San Antonio. He's in the back. I went in the store, and we had girls with us, and so I thought they were playing the music, and I didn't want to interrupt their music. I had to listen to. No offense to anybody else, but after '89, my music thing turned off. Okay, I'm stuck in the '80s. And
I
I'm
made it
always
to
gonna stay.
91.
Yeah, okay. Well, I give Metallica a pass in '91 there, but after that it shut off. But for 3 hours on that trip to San Antonio, man, I had to listen to Neon Trees, bands I've never even heard of. And I didn't shut it off because I was like, well, I guess that's what these girls want to listen to.
Yeah.
But I almost got in a bad mood over it.
Yeah.
You hear me?
I hear
I'm so
you.
passionate about this music. And when I found out it was his music, I would have turned that off after the first chord.
Okay, so Party Pablo likes to listen to other music then, huh? What about
Oh, man.
what about some songs that they brought up to you and say, hey, we should try this song, and you are decidedly against them? Has it ever happened that one of the guys in the
okay.
band?
It happens every week. Every week. All three of them, they what they do is they build this momentum and say, okay, let's tell him we want to play these 3 songs. And I'm not trying to be selfish, Wilmer. I'm just saying, look, if chicks don't know it and it wasn't big in the '80s, then we're not going to play it.
Yeah.
Because it's about them doing, let's see, they Slide It In from Whitesnake.
That's a
That's a big
fantastic
one.
song. It's become one of my
To
favorites.
you and me.
Yeah.
It's one of mine too. But I'm going to be honest with you, Wilmer. The majority of the girls don't
Here
know
I
that
go
song.
again. I guess it's on your list of Whitesnake songs to play.
Of course it is.
Yeah. Is this Love
And
with
so,
the other one or Still of the Night?
Another thing coming.
Judas
Another
Priest.
thing coming. we love that song, but I'm not sure that I read all those girls out there.
True.
So my point is, I'm not against any of it, but I want to gear towards the business model of making sure the females are having a good time. And at the end of the night, if there's not a lot of females in the crowd, then we'll deep dive into some stuff, and we have.
Okay.
We get into some of the Metallica deeper cuts,
Okay.
and we'll get into some stuff that's a little bit more.
What would
a
be
little
some
bit more-
Metallica deeper cuts for you? And I know it could be a tricky question because some Metallica fans are going to say, "Oh, that's not a deep cut." But
No,
what are
no, no.
some songs that you think?
No, I say deeper cut. It's not a deeper cut. It's Inner Sandman, of
Okay,
course.
okay.
But,
Well,
but,
that
I mean,
compared to the Sunset Strip, is definitely a track that some people would not be expecting in your show. What about songs that you have wanted to bring to the band, and all three of them are like, not my thing? Has it ever
yeah.
happened as well?
So, no, you're right. So I'm really into ballads, right? 80s ballads, rock ballads. I'm always into that. So I have to watch it because a lot of times we'll end up playing too many slow songs in there. And so like Bon Jovi's got some good stuff, Never Say Goodbye, and
Great.
he's got some good hits. Yeah. And I know the girls know those, but we have to be careful, and they have to remind me on that kind of stuff. Def Leppard, Love Bites.
Yeah. Do you
there's
play
just
that
some
song?
We don't. We
Okay.
don't. We do,
Why not?
because we
It's
try to
their,
watch
it's their only number one hit. It's a ballad. It's from one of the biggest seller albums. Why don't you play that song? Too
Well, I'll
hard?
tell you why. Because we don't use tracks.
Okay.
And a lot of bands, no offense to anybody else, but a lot of bands use tracks.
Well, even
And there's
even
a
the
lot-
songwriters use tracks sometimes.
You're right. So we try to pride ourselves on we don't use tracks because if it's three guys with instruments, sometimes four. He'll put on a guitar and play. But if we mess up, Wilmer, we want you to know we messed up, and we messed up because it's
Yeah.
live, right?
Correct.
And
And
we
that's the
do
beauty of
mess
it.
up. Yeah. And so when you're playing with tracks, that song has a lot of tracks in there. A lot. There's so many instruments
Yeah.
in there, and that Def Leppard's got more than three guys playing instruments. So we try to stay away from anything that's gonna have a lot of tracks in it.
Now, let me ask you something. Were you ever a Def Leppard fan? Because it seems that you started with Motley and you stood with Motley, and I love Motley Crue. But I discovered this music a little bit more through Def Leppard because of the videos and the radio. Were you ever a big Def Leppard fan?
Absolutely. First album I ever bought with my own money. It was two of them that I remember buying. I mean, your parents buy you stuff every once in a while, but the first two albums I remember buying with my own money was Def Leppard Pyromania and Quiet Riot Mental Health.
Oh my goodness, you were again like 11 years old when you did that.
Yeah, those with my own money. Those were the first two I bought.
Okay, well, I just went to see this fantastic band called Def Legged. You probably heard about it, and I was shocked that they played one track of Pyromania, Coming Under Fire, that Def Leppard themselves have never played live. But what I wanted to tell you is when you were talking about Love Bites, I'm guessing you're familiar with the VHS that came in 1989 called In the Round In Your Face. Back then it was a VHS, of course. It was the recording of the Hysteria tour. Does that ring a bell? Does that concert ring a bell?
Yeah, absolutely. That Hysteria tour, I
Okay.
believe they had the stage in the middle.
Yes, that's right. That's why the VHS is called In the Round In Your Face. Now here's the thing. I remember when I got that VHS, somebody must have let me borrow it. I was like, why in the world is Love Bites not there? I mean, Love Bites was not the first song I heard from them. I think it was Armageddon It. But I was like, that's the number one song on the radio. That's their biggest hit. Why are they not playing it? Even if it wasn't, when they recorded this, I was thinking 6 months ago, I'm sure they knew they were going to release it as a single. Well, guess what, Carter? I don't know if you heard the story, but I found out, because I'm a huge fan of Def Leppard, they didn't play it because they didn't know how to play the song live. They had recorded it and assembled it in the studio over the scope of so many months, sometimes playing one string at a time, because these guys were produced by the incredible talent of Mutt Lange, who wear them out so much that at times he would record one song over the scope of 4 months. When the tour came about, they could not play the song. They said, we just couldn't play it. It would be too complicated to learn for us to have it ready for the tour. Thankfully, they had enough songs. And it goes to what you're saying. I respect that you choose not to play it because it's too complicated, but there's no fear in saying that, because the original band themselves didn't play it when it was their number one hit. They waited another year until the next year to rehearse it and learn it, where it was obvious that it had become a number one and they needed to play it. But it's the intricacies of that music. Now, I want to go back to what you were saying. You're a four-piece. The singer sometimes picks up the guitar. How do you go about playing or choosing songs that are played by bands with four members, like Cinderella, Poison, Motley Crue, versus songs that were played by fan members, like Whitesnake music, Bon Jovi music. You mentioned even Journey songs, which has more than five members at times. How do you go about that? Does that ever come into play? How can you reproduce the song faithfully live?
Yeah, no, you know what? It used to come into play sometimes, but not really, because I don't know what Magic Mark does over there sometimes with that guitar, man. But he can make about he can make that system that he has over there sound like there's two guitars playing the entire time, man. And he's not using
Is
tracks.
there a
We don't
chance
type
that
any
he's
words.
using backing tracks and you don't know it, Carter?
Nope, he's not. I promise you, man. The guy doesn't use tracks. I'm telling you, he'll play one over the other. He would he. I mean, that would be a better question for him. But I'm telling you, man, he's got amazing skills on what he can do over there.
Okay, okay, yeah, I hear you. No, that's incredible. That's what I've loved about the tribute scene. I honestly didn't go to see tribute bands in the past. First, because I had the dream of watch the original songwriters perform live, and those concerts are expensive. So I wanted to save my money to see them at least once. But then I thought, these are tribute bands. They're not even cover bands. I knew nothing about the scene. I'm just being honest. I used to think that a cover band would be a band so good that they can easily play any of 100 songs. But a tribute band had to focus on only 10 songs from the same band because they were not as good as a cover band. So I stayed away from the scene. Like, if it's a tribute, the only tribute bands that I saw were ABBA tributes because I love the music of ABBA, and there's no way that we could have seen the music live. But when I went to the first show, the very first show by this band called Joshua Tree, I'm a huge U2 fan as well. I was blown away. They play some songs that U2 themselves never play anymore, and they play them so well. Next day, same situation with this band called Infestation playing tribute to the songs of Rat. And I'm not even an Iron Maiden fan, and Maiden Texas was closing that show. I stayed and watched, and I was blown away by the musicianship, by the talent that you guys put into this, and how wonderfully the songs come alive. And I was just impressed with that. I am just amazed at the degree of professionalism that musicians have. And now it makes me bring up the question, is Sunset Strip a tribute band or a cover band? And
Okay,
how do you feel about
that's
those
yeah.
terms?
No, no. Okay, so let me. I'm glad you asked that because, man, that speed bump comes up a lot. So I believe this, right? So a cover band is a band that goes up and covers the music. And I'm talking about no costume, just goes up and covers the music. Cover band sometimes doesn't even sound like the singer. They're just covering the music, right? And I think the biggest disconnect here, Wilmer, is when a band calls themselves a tribute to, but they don't look like the part and they don't act like the part. And I'm not being negative against anybody, but there's a few tribute bands that they will tribute a band, but when you go watch them, they don't even look like the part or even try to sound like the part. They're just singing the songs. So to be a tribute, I believe that you have to act the part, sound like it, and really do the roles of it. So being a tribute, what I try to do is say we are a tribute to the 80s. So I'm not trying to be Tommy Lee. Party Pablo is not trying to be Nikki Sixx. Magic Mark is not trying to be Eddie Van Halen. And Whiskey Warren's not David Lee Roth. We're not trying to do that. What we're trying to do is be a tribute to the 80s with the costumes and take everybody back to the 80s. Now, does our singer sing like each one of those guys? Absolutely. He tries to mimic their voices, and he's really good at it. But one of the biggest things, there's a couple of venues here in town that are pretty big that they've approached me and said, look, we only have tributes. We don't do cover bands. And I've tried to explain this to them, but it just doesn't get it. I mean, Lava Cantina has a hard time with that. I mean, we're booked to play there, but they have a hard time with it because they're like, well, we only do tributes. Legacy Hall, same way. Well, we only do tributes. And I understand that. And we have enough places to play.
And do you tell them that
but
you're a tribute to the 80s? Have you used that
absolutely,
phrase?
yeah.
I
And some
like
of the
that
people that
phrase,
book
a
there,
tribute to the 80s.
yeah, I know, absolutely. It's on all of our swag. It's on our T-shirts. It's on our websites. Everything. But until you see us, then it's kind of hard to be able to sell that. So
Okay.
with that being said, it's a hurdle. You know, sometimes people just
Now, what would you
they
say to somebody who could be on the fence? Because I myself have not seen you live, and I'll tell you why. Because I wanted to get. I mean, I'm obviously a fan of albums. I actually love box sets, the ones that come with a lot of rarities, demos, and stuff. So I have heard of the band Sunset Strip before, and I kind of learned that they play songs by different bands. I would choose to go to a tribute one because I expected to hear 10 songs or 15 from the same band, hear some rare tracks, and not just the hits. How would you approach a person that, like myself, of course I'm going to be watching you guys, especially after getting to know how much work comes into what you do. But what would you say to some people that maybe like, I don't want to just listen to the greatest hits? What else can they expect from you other than just the greatest hits that they probably are not too interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing: people that think about that, well, it's just another tribute band that's going to sing two of every hot band that was in the '80s. What we pride ourselves on, man, is it is definitely a show. I mean, if you come out, you're not going to be just standing there listening to the music and go home unentertained. Me and the guys have put together a show that is entertaining. So you get, don't get me wrong, you get 75% of the music, but 25% of it is the show. And trust me, I mean, depending on who's in the audience and what they're requesting, we try to get to the people that are saying, hey, we really want to hear this song from White Lion, or we really want to hear Jackal, this song. You know, it may take us a little bit to get it together, but we're going to play it.
Now, Jackal is 1992, if I'm not wrong, or 1993.
Yeah, I know, but this girl I
You're
got...
flexible, right?
Yeah, this is crazy. When will it rain?
So listen.
That song jams.
Okay, When Will It Rain? I'm not familiar with that. Is that a song by Jackal?
Oh yeah, you got to check it out. Your life, Wilmer, is not complete until you hear that song.
I'll definitely check it out. I remember I Stand Alone, which was a fantastic song. When the Lumberjack song came about, I was a little frustrated because a lot of people who didn't know came for the novelty. And I like, you should listen to I Stand Alone. But anyway, let me ask you something. You were talking about the fact that you were married for 30 years. You began your band about 4 years ago, and you got a divorce 3 years ago. Is there any connection to that?
Yeah, there is. I mean, not 100%. Now, I'm not being careful when I say that. You know, the thing is that, you know, being married that long, there's some things that, so I didn't play in bands. I didn't do anything for about 20 something years. And I was playing in a country band for a while, but the country band is more laid back. You know, playing in a country band for about 10 years, towards the last 10 years when I was married, it's more laid back. It's more, you're not gigging as much. And the gigs are, you know, they're shorter, and you're not really dressing up. So it's just easier, set your drums up, you go home. This right here is not easy for females to be around. And I say that anybody that's in the business, you know. It takes somebody that's special, that's really got to understand what you're doing and has to be supportive. It's not easy, and sometimes, Wilmer, it's not fair. It's not fair for the women to, you know, and I say that about the guys in the band. I mean, each one of these guys in the band, they've got somebody, their significant other, and it's not easy, right? Because you're pulled in so many different directions, and sometimes the 80s scene is not as clean and as put together as some of these other scenes, and it can be hard. So to answer your question, you know, I think towards the end of the marriage, had some correlation there for about, I would say 25%, 20% of the reason why was pretty much, hey, you know what, I this is another thing that I'm just not happy with. We split on great terms. We were never mad at each other about it. I think a lot of it, without getting too deep, Wilmer, is that we knew that it was probably ending when our kids got older and out. And so when our kids did get older and out, there wasn't a whole lot in common with us anymore. And so we just we talked about it, washed our hands, and then, you know, just kind of did that. So to answer your question, I would be lying to you if I said it didn't have anything to do with it, but it wasn't the major breaking point.
So looking back, since it wasn't a major breaking point, there's nothing that you wish you would have done differently in regards to Sunset Strip and how that impacted your personal life?
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. Now, have I put more time and investment and more emotion into it now? Yes, because I have more time that I didn't have before.
Did your former spouse come to your shows when Sunset Strip was playing and you were still together?
She came to a couple of them, and then that was like a little bit more than she wanted to see. So she was like, you know, I'll support you from here. You know, I'm trusting that you're going to be a good guy, and I'm trusting this, but I can't be around that. And that's fair.
I see. It reminds me of this. It reminds me of the song "Every Rose Has Its Thorn." You know, the lyrics
my
of
favorite
that song.
My favorite song of all time, and it always will be my favorite song of all time.
Do you know, Carter, that that song was written here in Dallas?
That's right, at a laundromat.
In a laundromat in Dallas. I wonder if Bret Michaels would ever recall which laundromat, because I think that place should be enshrined as a temple to rock and roll.
Great song.
It's just a fantastic song. It's just a fantastic song. Now, talking about the females in the band, and we're over at the hour, so we're gonna cut it short real quick. So it seems that the sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle is still around for Sunset Strip.
You know, I like to say that it's out there now for Sunset Strip. I will tell you, for Sunset Strip, it's really not. I mean, everybody's got somebody, and the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Even though we give the image of that because that's the '80s scene. So when you see us out there and you act in this, that's what sells. That's what people come to visualize. But talking to you, I will tell you, the guys don't touch drugs. I for one, have never done a drug in my life. I mean, drinking's there, of course
Why not?
it is. I just, it wasn't for me, and I don't judge anybody. I've never smoked a joint in my life. I've never touched anything that was illegal. And and
I
again, I
tell
don't
people
judge
the only
anybody.
reason I never did drugs is because I didn't have the money to buy them. I mean, thankfully in my country they were very expensive and I couldn't afford them. And if I had a little money, guess what I would do with it? I would go and try to buy a rock or heavy metal record.
Yeah.
That's where I use my money. That's where I put all my passion, and that's what kept me alive. And you know what? Thinking about that, they say that music can save a life. Do you think that's been the case with Carter?
Oh man, I mean, look, I don't hunt and I don't fish and I don't play golf. My entire hobby is just '80s rock. If I'm not playing it, it's weird. If we don't have a gig, I'm out supporting live local music everywhere. It's just in my blood. It's just what I want to do. And when it comes to the drugs, again, getting back to, I never, and to be honest with you, out there, and this may be saying too much, but last gig we had, people are handing it to me, stuffing it in my pockets, and I'm just like, I take it and I just get dispose of it, but I just never done it. And I can speak for the guys in the band. I know them, the professionals. They don't touch it either.
Now, you know what's great about hearing you talk about this? Sometimes I had this coming from my parents and from other people around, teachers or whatnot, adults, that when they saw me as a teenager digging deep into this music, they would warn me of the dangers. Look at how those people live. And I know I never minded it that too much. I kind of hope that it would happen to me. Hey, who was to never dream of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle?
Right.
But the thing is, I always have thought nobody can imagine what it's like to be there. I wish I could. I wish I could experience it for a year, for an album, for a tour cycle, or even for a month or a week. But hearing you talk, you're talking about a local band that plays tributes to these other bands, where you are even exposed to the dangers that come with a partying lifestyle. And I can only imagine, and I feel so much more. The word that comes to mind is compassion. It doesn't sound right, but so much more compassion and empathy for those rock stars that have struggled. Every time that I hear people struggling in their lifestyle, I'm like, I am nobody to judge. The fact that they may be using or in rehab, first, I don't want to make jokes about it, and I don't want to make harsh comments about it. I would like to see how I could support. I don't find any other way to support but buying a record or going to a show. Now, with Sunset Strip, what you're saying is it's incredible how this permeates. And it's an important topic for me because as I was looking, how do I name this podcast? I'm an adult male, I'm 46. I have 4 children, ages 6 to 13. I have an older daughter who is 25 but lives in my country and she's not around here. She could not come to concerts with me. But I'm thinking, I cannot call the podcast Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll because it would not be honest to myself. And it's not what I'm wanting. So I try to change the name to Love, Life, and Rock and Roll. And that's what
great.
I love about what you're doing, Carter. You're just making me love life even more. You're bringing life to my journey. You're bringing life to my kids. But it makes me want to ask, are there ever any shows where I could bring my kids? I could bring my 6-year-old because even your mama complained that you cuss too much from stage, man. What are we going to do about it?
Yeah, no. I know. I've been trying to clean that up. Yeah, no. So there are kids that come. We've got our roadie. He brings his kids any venue that allows kids, and there's many. He brings. Last weekend we were at Chill, and he brought his kids. There's kids out there, and we cater to that, man. I always, you bring your kids out. I promise you, they're gonna have a good time. We'll take some pictures. We'll give them some drumsticks, Magic Mark. We'll kick them some guitar picks. We'll have a good time.
Okay, so if the venue allows kids, you cater the show, understanding that there may be families in the audience.
That's right.
That's great to hear, Carter. Listen, it's been a wonderful conversation. We're running 40 minutes over the 1 hour limit that I thought we'd have. There's so many questions that I still have in the camp for you, but I'm going to try to catch you again. I'm going to try to persuade you to do a part two of this because there's so much to enjoy talking to you for somebody that loves music. I used to think I love music so much. You guys love it way more than I do because you spend so many hours a week investing your time, investing your money into the gear, and bringing it to life. As a member of the audience, I want to thank you for what you do. I want to encourage you to keep doing it because you're creating this live music experience that creates memories for families, memories for people like myself. And tell us once more, if somebody's listening in and they want to see you perform live, where can they find information about Sunset Strip?
That's right. Go to Facebook, Sunset Strip Dallas 80s Band. All of our dates are listed on there. Come follow us. Follow us there. Give us a like. Let us know you're coming. Wilmer, really love what you're doing, man. It means a lot. Thanks for being on your show. I'm going to tell you, don't ever stop what you're doing. Long live rock and roll. That's my time. We will see you next time. And yes, there will be a next time. Good night.
Yes, there will be a next time. And like Carter said, come to the shows, guys, and we'll see you there rocking to live music. Thank you so much, Carter. Have a wonderful rest of your day, sir. And we'll see you rocking out with Sunset Strip.
We'll see you, brother.